What's going on, guys? Welcome to Fantasy Scholars. Today I'm going to go over 5 tips for succeeding in Fantasy Baseball 2021. Tip number 1, buy low and sell high. This is kind of a simple tactic, but it is really effective. So basically what you want to do is you want to buy players that are at their lowest possible value, that really have a potential to be much better than they're producing at that current point in time, and that's when you want to get that player at the absolute lowest. And a lot of beginners are just going to be like, oh, they're not good this year, let's just move away from them. That's when you got to get that player, because you know that, if I'm just patient, that player is going to explode and be really good. On the flip side of that, you need to sell high. Basically, you want to sell players that are just at the absolute peak of their performance, that you're like, they're not going to do any better than this. Let's sell them now and then get some really good players. I mean, you'd be surprised, like some really mediocre players that are just producing at an insane level. I've been able to like sell those players to get really solid players, and then that player that I sold just kind of fades away. So buy low and sell high. Up next is streaming starters. You guys may not know what this means, but basically throughout the season you want to get rental starters. And what I do is I take 2 starters in my lineup that are just kind of like on the borderline of like, maybe I could drop them. I don't know if they're really that great. And you look for starters on the waiver wire to bring into your team that have like really solid matchups for maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks, and maybe that starter even becomes really good and part of your lineup. So basically, you want to take 2 starters. Maybe if you just have one, I mean, it kind of works either way. But you look at the waiver wire, monitor the waiver wire, and say, hey, I like what this starter's doing. He's got some good games coming up where I think he can get some wins and a low ERA and get some strikeouts. Then you bring him into your lineup, and then you're like, okay, we had him for about a week. We don't really need him anymore. Let's look for another starter. It's really effective throughout the season, and you may find a gem. Up next is pay attention to relief pitching. This is crucial during the season. If you look at the waiver wire, you want to look at relief pitchers that can possibly become closers or are just producing at a really high level for that current time, and you can kind of switch them in and out, and again, you may find a gem. So look for guys who are next in line to close, because you never know if that current closer will lose his job and then that relief pitcher that you picked up will become the closer. It's really effective because you could find an absolute gem. Up next is pay attention to the waiver wire daily and look at your weakest positions. So if you're like, I don't really have that solid of a second baseman, pay attention to that waiver wire. And guys, I'm going to be posting a ton of videos throughout the season of the top guys to pick up, and just monitor it. You got to look at the waiver wire to see, okay, I can see this second baseman is producing for this team. He was really undervalued, but I'm going to pick him up. And you could just find a really good player. And if it doesn't work out, you just drop him. So really pay attention to the waiver wire and look at the weakest positions on your team. And lastly, we have starting lineup. Make sure you start all the starters possible. So basically what I mean by that, I know that was like, what are you talking about? You want to make sure that your starting guys are playing in each of these games. So a lot of you guys may not know that, like, all the time your studs are not going to actually start in that game. And 3 hours prior to the game is normally when a team releases their starting lineup. So you want to get guys that are playing every day and, that are actually playing that day. So it may be weird to bench Bryce Harper if he's not playing that game, but you want to get guys that are playing. And yes, it may affect your average, but if you're in a points league, it's going to be crucial, because it's like, well, what if this bench player that's really solid gets a home run, gets RBI, gets a couple hits, and is really productive? So you want to start the starters that are actually playing. So pay attention daily to your lineup, because you don't want to look at your lineup and say, oh my gosh, 3 of my guys are not playing, but my bench guys are playing, and look at, he just had a huge game. So make sure you start everyone who is actually playing. Thank you guys for watching this video. I'll see you guys next time.